Welcome to Making Leaders, a series of podcast interviews with people who are veteran leaders or emerging leaders of the fast-changing space and satellite business. The goal of Making Leaders is to focus attention on talent attraction and leadership development. They are vital elements in the success of the space and satellite business today at a time when we are in relentless competition for the best and brightest with the best known names in technology. My name is Robert Bell, Executive Director of SSPI. And my thanks go to Access Intelligence, Airbus, EchoStar Hughes, Eutelsat, and OneWeb Satellites for supporting the Making Leaders campaign throughout the year and making this podcast possible. In 2020, SSPI once again partnered with the U.S. branch of the Students for the Exploration and Development of Space, or SEDS, on a research competition for students in university chapters of the organization. Our title was Taking Out the Trash, and the topic was space debris. There are more than 500,000 pieces of junk orbiting the Earth, and those are just the ones big enough for us to see. The future of a space economy literally depends on solving the problem of all that dangerous debris circling in low Earth orbit at fantastic speeds. Ignore the problem long enough, and we will deny ourselves access to the final frontier. In this competition, we asked student teams to research the problem and recommend technical, political, and economic solutions to reduce the volume of new debris and remove existing debris from orbit. 9 university teams in all accepted our challenge, and in November of 2020, 2 were selected by our panel of judges as first and second place prize winners. Today, we are speaking with members of the top scoring team who are students attending New York University's campus in Abu Dhabi. Of course, in the age of COVID, they are actually staying home and attending classes remotely. The team members are Alison Waterman, Kasak-Gliboff, Aaryan Sharma, Kartiki Singhal, and Ansh Kachalya. In today's conversation, we get to talk with 3 of them, Alison Waterman, Kasak-Gliboff, and Aaryan Sharma. Welcome, first of all, and congratulations on achieving a win in this competition, which was a very interesting one about taking out the trash. Let's start by finding out a little bit about you, however. So would you introduce yourself and tell us about your course of study?
Yeah, I'm Alison. While I was at NYU Abu Dhabi, I studied electrical engineering, and I actually just graduated last May. I'm originally from Sacramento, California, but then moved to the UAE for those 4 years, and now I'm back in the US. I'm working at DreamUp, which is a sister company to NanoRacks and deals with a lot of student spaceflight experiments. So it's really great that this competition kind of segues into a lot of what I ended up working on after graduation. So that's a little bit about me.
It's very unusual to get that kind of synergy, but good for you. Aaryan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, so I'm Aaryan. I'm a second year undergraduate student from India, and I'm currently studying physics. This competition was actually like the first time I participated in something like this, but it was really great to be a part of, and I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Thank you. We're proud to have you with us. And finally, Hannah, could you give us your name and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Hannah. I'm from Bloomington, Indiana, and I'm a senior now studying social research and public policy, but with a focus on the environment.
Okay, that's really interesting. So you're studying, so you're coming at this from a completely non-engineering, even non-space phase. So what brought you into this?
So actually, that's exactly what appealed to me about it, because at that point, I was feeling very much like I was very torn choosing my major. And when I chose the social sciences, at that point I was feeling very like siloed out of like I felt like once you picked STEM or non-STEM, like that was your track and there was no like crossover after that. So I was excited when I saw Alison post about this and say like they're also looking for students who are in public policy or something like that. I thought like this is such a cool opportunity for me to learn about something that I otherwise wouldn't really have any like access to engage with to the same extent. So yeah, I was just really like all of the material was very new to me, but it was an exciting chance to like read up on areas that I'd never really thought about. And especially because like the environment and waste management was something I'd been interested in, but I never thought of it in the context of outer space. So it was interestingly related in a way to like what I hope to pursue, but in an entirely different context.
Well, good for you. One of the things I like to tell people is that the entire space industry runs on a job position called the sales engineer. And there are these unique people who can sell, but also understand the engineering well enough to sell intelligently. And it's a really weird combination of skills if you think about it. And yet the entire industry can't live without it. Aaryan, what attracted you to this competition?
I was also mostly just eager to learn about space debris and this whole issue. So when I saw the post that Alison had put up uh, telling us about the competition, I had actually just a few days before that read this article about the Kessler syndrome, and while I was doing research for another class, and so I read it and it was really interesting. So it was just a chance to explore that more. So I wanted to try it out.
Interesting is one word for it. I personally find it terrifying because I've seen the movie Gravity. I know what can happen. Alison, what brought you into this?
So when I was at NYU AD, I was the president of the aerospace club. So I had worked on a few other student competitions in the past, kind of bringing people together. This was the first policy competition, though, that our club had ever done. And so when I found out about it, I thought, this is a really exciting opportunity to involve, kind of like Hannah mentioned, students that wouldn't typically attend an aerospace club event, but would still be interested to learn about space. And so I just wanted to put a team together and see how it would go. So I was kind of on the lookout for student competitions related to space. I'd been involved with SEDS and things like that. So gone to the Space Vision conference, things like that. So it was pretty much through SEDS that I got involved, but that was what interested me in the competition.
Well, indeed, they are our good partner on these. So as you went into this from very different backgrounds and interests, what were your biggest challenges that you encountered, just for the moment, setting aside, of course, COVID-19? Alison, you want to start with that?
Yeah, I think part of the challenge was just kind of getting everyone from different backgrounds up to speed on the different aspects of the problem itself, where some people had no space background whatsoever. And then there were people like me who came at it from being a space enthusiast, but not having a policy background at all. And so I think it was just kind of getting past that initial stage of gathering all of our research documents, getting like that conceptual understanding of what was going on, and then being able to translate that into a report. It was just kind of moving from that research phase to the writing phase, I think, was the hardest thing.
Interesting. What did, well, actually, I'm going to ask you that question about this. It's very interesting because you've each had a chance to learn something you didn't know. Hannah, how about you? What was your biggest challenge on this?
Yeah, I think so. For me, there was a pretty steep learning curve in terms of like the terminology, but even just the concepts. Like in the beginning, I ended up just watching a ton of YouTube videos that explained what satellites even are, that there are ones with propulsion, there are ones that don't, there are the different, there's like LEO, GEO, and NEO. Like all of these things were very new to me. So I think like I had a lot of catching up to do in that regard. But it was also like, it was almost like having a little extra class on the side, a little ungraded one. So yeah, that was probably my biggest challenge in the beginning.
Aaryan, how about you? I assume it wasn't the physics that was the problem for you.
No, yeah. So it was the policy part. A lot of it was quite new to me, and yeah, one issue was if I had an idea about, or maybe implementing this policy, because I had no previous experience. It was almost like a guess shot in the dark as to whether it would be effective at all, or whether there would be, whether international collaboration between these countries would be possible, and so forth. And I also felt like there was a very large amount of information. So while doing research, it could be easy to just get lost in the sheer volume of information out there. But in the end, yeah, I think I learned a lot from the experience, and it was interesting to look at the issue from both a technical and a policy perspective.
Yeah, I think our competitions tend to be, and they're deliberately meant to throw our competitors into a bit of the deep end of the pool and say, here's a lot of information. Now you have to form a picture out of it and then decide what you want to do about it in this particular case, which is, it's really kind of what the rest of your career is going to be like. So it's okay. Now each of the teams in our competition is assigned a mentor or reviewer from SSPI to help out. And how did that help you in your project? I guess I don't know who to start with. Why don't we start with Alison again?
Okay, yeah. So our mentor was Therese Jones, and she was extremely helpful, extremely knowledgeable. We had her join in on our weekly meetings as a team so that we could kind of update her on the process. And I think the main ways that she helped were just answering our questions, sharing resources, and then like providing feedback on some of the sections we had written, but just having her as a source of kind of information and expertise to draw from and to bounce questions off of as we read about things. And we thought, oh, I'm not too sure how this agreement worked, or can you share some resources on this? And she was always very like knowledgeable, willing to contribute, showing up to our meetings on a weekly basis. So it was just super valuable to have her on board. Wow,
that is devotion. I have to break that. I guess I got to break the bad news of some of our other mentors. It may turn out that way, but that's. I'm sure they all the mentors who work in our program come back and say it was a really good experience. And so, what's my next assignment? Aaryan and Hannah, do you have anything to add to that?
I think Alison covered most of it, but yeah, it was also helpful because she was someone who had knowledge and experience in the field. Two things she helped with was, one was kind of finding starting points for research. So she would tell us that, this is an area where some international frameworks are lacking a little. So maybe you can start looking for recommendations from there. And also it was great to bounce ideas off her. So, if we came up with a recommendation, we could ask her, do you think this is a good idea? And she would give us some feedback on that.
Anything to add to that, Hannah? It sounds pretty comprehensive so far.
It's pretty comprehensive, yeah. I mean, I would say that like there were some times where I know she like put comments in parts I'd written and said like, okay, well, if you're going to talk about this part, then like talk about that aspect of it as well. Like, because she had this like oversight, it was easy for her to see like where we'd missed spots. So yeah, that was super helpful.
Well, and that's exactly the intention. I mean, these are just people who are experienced. Sometimes they're not even experienced in the topic you're talking about. But another thing that happens is a lot of our mentors will then connect you with somebody else in their company or something who can answer a specific question. So it's been a really powerful thing, I think, for everybody involved. Because of the pandemic, this was actually a pretty terrible year for university studies, not to mention an extracurricular project like this one. So what impact did that have on your work?
I think that in some ways, I think one of the main difficulties that we faced during the pandemic was being such an international team that once the pandemic started, some members of our team chose to go home, some chose to stay in Abu Dhabi. And as a result of that, we were working from very different time zones for the last portion of the project. So that was something that from a scheduling perspective just could make things trickier. But in terms of the impact on the rest of our schoolwork, I feel like it kind of kept me disciplined a little bit almost, because most of my extracurriculars were canceled when the pandemic started. And for example, my aerospace club had a rocketry project that we weren't able to see through because we couldn't gather and work on a rocketry project. So I think in that sense, it was almost really rewarding to still have this like purposeful activity that I could spend my free time on once everything else was canceled. So just speaking for myself, I think it was very almost beneficial. Like I looked forward to working on it. So.
Okay, so really this was a COVID ready project, right?
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
How about for you, Hannah? Was that the same case?
Yeah, I think like I was a bit scattered once like I think I associate my productivity a lot with like spaces that I go work in. And so when that was sort of disrupted, I think I was a little more flustered. But I definitely agree that this project really was able to withhold like spatial distance. And yeah, I think like having weekly meetings also really kept us on track because it's tempting as a team, especially when it's a written project, to say, okay, everyone go do your part, we'll meet up in like 3 months. And then that's like obviously a little bit risky. So I think having like the weekly meeting really help keep me accountable. Yeah, it was a little bit piece of normalcy amidst everything.
Yep, I just finished one of my weekly meetings a couple hours ago. So yeah, the principle works. Arshan, how about you?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing actually. I really like the fact that this was something that we could continue to like put our minds to and keep doing, even as everything else like sports and got cancelled, and even like classes went online, everything was changing. But this was still something that we could do because the final outcome didn't really change that much because of the pandemic, since we weren't like building something physical. So yeah, it was really nice to have something that we could do consistently outside of academics to just keep us distracted.
There you go. It was a high level distraction, even better than Netflix. Now, but one of the other side of that question is that not every team in our competition was able to complete their report for evaluation because of these kind of obstacles. So, what do you think kept your team going in spite of the difficulties? Arjun, do you have an opinion on that?
I actually think Alison deserves a lot of credit for doing that, because she was the one who like took the initiative and set up our initial meetings and the video calls with Therese and all that. And once we got going, I think it was easier to continue on because yeah, like Hannah mentioned, with the weekly meetings, it became like part of our routine. So once we got that initial impetus, I think it was easier to go on.
Right. How about you, Hannah? What do you think made the difference for your team, in addition to the good works of Alison?
I think I almost wonder if the fact that we were scattered, which was in a way an obstacle, but it can also be an obstacle that sort of like certain challenges like evoke some determination too. And I think like because a lot of us were taking classes from different time zones, and we're already having to coordinate a lot of things like that, I felt that that was something that sort of prepared us to see through with the project despite the obstacles. Because as much as the obstacles were there, but they weren't unique to this project. They were sort of impacting a lot of different moving parts in life. So yeah.
All right, so the going got tough, but the tough kept going. Alison, from your perspective in trying to make this all happen, what do you think? What are some of the things that made the difference?
I think that, my team says they would credit me. I credit the team just as much for continuing to, do their part, to show up, to be there, even when, they were dealing with flights and quarantines and online classes and a whole lot of changes in their life. And I think that's just a testament to how passionate and dedicated they were, that I think we were a team that did it out of like a genuine desire to learn and desire to contribute. And I think once that research was started, like the team was dedicated enough to just see it through to the end, which I'm like, it really blew me away. Like I was just so appreciative of everything that they continued to contribute.
Yep, it is the exception to the rule. So congratulations on that. So now we get to, I guess, the question I wanted to ask you earlier on, which is, so what are some of the specific things you learned from this competition that you didn't know before, given upon your area of expertise? Why don't you go first, Alison?
I think that a big part of what I learned is kind of the relationship between space technology and international relations, which is not something that I had given a lot of thought to. I think growing up in the US, you kind of get a very US-centric view of space exploration, and maybe the US and Russia and the moon landing and that kind of thing. But you don't get the sense of kind of the larger international cooperation and the different players involved, how the UN is involved, how other regulatory bodies are involved in creating these frameworks. So I think that what I took away from it was just kind of a greater appreciation for the complexity, the political complexity and the policy complexity of all of this, the social science side, I guess.
How about you, Arjun?
So I did learn a lot more about the topic itself, but also overall, I think that I had like two main takeaways. One was it changed my perspective on sustainability, in that I had never really thought of sustainability as we use the term on Earth in the context of space. If I heard it, I kind of assumed it meant creating like self-sustaining ecosystems, like growing potatoes on Mars, like Matt Damon. But this idea that uh, the satellites that we've put up in the past could affect our spacefaring activities for many years to come really shows the importance of thinking about what we leave behind, not only on Earth, but also when we go to space. And yeah, it also just the tremendous amount of foresight and cooperation that's required in space exploration activities because of the long-term consequences. Yeah, that was something that I hadn't really appreciated fully before. So that was,
Yeah.
yeah, something new to me.
Hannah, how about you? Last word on this question.
Yeah,
Now
I
you,
guess
now you, now you really came from a different background. You were the one I really wanted to ask about this.
Well, obviously there was a lot of the technical aspect that was extremely new to me. But I think it also really helped me appreciate how difficult it is to establish accountability and responsibility for like a shared good. And that's like, there's like the tragedy of the commons that we talk about in any kind of environmental studies context all the time. But that and international relations is just as central of a problem and trying to find a solution to space debris, because like how do you ensure, or how do you incentivize people to be responsible with the amount of waste they're producing in space, in the ocean, and anywhere. So I mean, it was interesting to see that parallel like reach beyond the Earth, which is kind of discouraging, but kind of it makes sense in the end. Like it is a very central problem that coming at it from the social science perspective that we're faced with.
Well, I think there's an interesting parallel here because the issue of space debris has been discussed for a very, very long time. And it's always been the problem that, well, when it gets bad, we'll do something about it. Just in the last 2 to 3 years, we've begun to see some potentially commercial solutions emerging. I mean, they're all still just pilots and so forth, but it's been very interesting to me, just as in the same thing, of course, is true in the sustainability debate, right? We're finding out that wind is really actually a great place to generate power. It's cheaper than most fossil fuels. So that gives me some hope about all of this, because as you say, if you just count on people to do the right thing, it can be an awfully long wait, especially when it costs them money. That's the real, everybody's happy to do the right thing unless it costs them millions of dollars, and then it's another discussion. Just to sort of turn back to where we started, I'd just like to hear from each of you. What are your hopes for a career? We already know that Alison's doing some dreaming with Dream Up, but what do you sort of look forward to in your career? And why don't we start with you, Hannah?
Yeah, I actually am looking at applying social research to keeping plastics out of marine ecosystems and seeing how, yeah, like especially in areas where waste management isn't super accessible or isn't super affordable, what can be done to like minimize the negative impact of that on people's health and on like the ecosystems they live in. So not space, but almost a similar problem.
Not space, but thank you. That's one of the, I don't know, 300 major sustainability problems we have to solve, just to pick a number. Aaryan, how about you? What are you looking forward to with your physics degree?
I haven't made any concrete plans for the future yet, but I would actually love to work in space exploration or the aerospace sector, because it's something I've been fascinated with ever since I was really young. And so, yeah, I'd love to work in that as a career.
Well, as I like to tell people, I am from a $400 billion industry called commercial space and satellite, and they're looking for young people to carry the mantle. So I'm sure you'll find lots of opportunity, whether it's in India, which has its own very aggressive space program, or someplace else. And Alison, how about you? Of course, we can't talk about what your next job is because you're so satisfied in your current one. But where do you think you see yourself ending up in a few years?
Yeah, great question. I absolutely love the work that I do at DreamUp. It's really rewarding to work with students. And I think that was kind of something I realized from this competition and projects like it, was that my passion was really in organizing student competitions around space, which is exactly what I get to do in my job, which I love. Working with a lot of student payloads and communications, marketing, things like that related to student space research. I think in the future, I would like to stay in the small satellite sector and maybe explore some of the connections between space communications technology and sustainable development. I'm really interested in, different countries around the world, how the development of their space programs impacts the development of the country as a whole. Things like engaging students in STEM education, which I'm also really passionate about. So I'm not sure exactly what direction my career will take after this. I would like to go back to grad school in the future, but I really love the work I'm doing right now, and it's the field I'm passionate about. So it's really great getting to work there.
Well, I'm really glad to hear you say you don't really quite know what it's going to look like, because I always have a little difficulty with people who tell me they have 10-year plans, because I've never seen one succeed.
Especially in this industry, it's developing so rapidly. Like what new commercial space is just, who knows what's 10 years, 15 years, 20 years down the line.
Well, I want to thank Alison Waterman, Aaryan Sharma, and Hannah Kasak-Gliboff for spending some time with us and telling us about the experience of doing this competition for SSPI and SEDS. So I wish you well in your careers. If there's anything we can at SSPI can do for you, you know where to find me. And look forward to my next opportunity to talk with you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Like any tech industry, the space and satellite business is driven by the ambition, the knowledge, and the skills of an amazing group of new and established leaders, and the young people entering the industry, who may become our next generation of leaders. You can learn more about the Taking Out the Trash competition and the NYU Abu Dhabi team at our website, sspi.org, and just look while you're there for the Making Leaders campaign. My thanks to Access Intelligence, Airbus, EchoStar Hughes, Eutelsat, and OneWeb Satellites for supporting the Making Leaders campaign throughout the year and making this podcast possible. You can follow us on Twitter at SSPI. On Facebook or LinkedIn, just search for Space and Satellite Professionals. If you're not a member, I encourage you to become one by going to sspi.org/join. For SSPI, this is Robert Bell.